Hey everyone, RogueGold here. Welcome back to the Division 2. In this one, we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Steel & Sons exotic ACR. This was released just this week. In-game, it is rewarded from the new Broken Rain Incursion, and although I really love the look of this weapon, it's fun to play with, and I think it has some redeeming qualities. As the title alludes to, I don't think this item is quite where it should be, especially given the fact that it is joining the elusive list of prestige exotics we have in the game alongside the likes of the Eagle Bear, the Ravenous, the Ouroboros from Incursions and Raids past. I'm a bit let down, but I do think there is a very clear path here to make this thing better. We'll get into all of it. If you enjoy this one and you want to see more from me on the Division 2 moving forward, then be sure to subscribe. Sending out a huge shout out and thank you to our channel members as always. Thank you all so much for your incredible dedication to the videos, to the channel. It means the world and allows me to keep going. But alright, let's get to the breakdown. Alright, so here is the Steel & Sons in all of its glory. As I mentioned a moment ago, one of my absolute favorite parts of this new exotic is the visuals. I think they knocked it out of the park. I really like when these weapons can walk that line between having a tactical feel, but then also having the intricacies that an exotic is meant to, and between the straps on this, the flashlight attachment, the taped on additional mag, the burnt metal on the chassis. I just really like how all of this came together. Also, quick additional shout out to whoever on the team made this weapon in particular. Really nice to see the mods on this have their own unique names and quotes yet again. This was a standard for all exotic weapons back in year 1, but since then I don't think we've really seen that happen, but it's just that nice extra exotic flair and uniqueness that I think it gives these items, so very cool. Before we break down the stats and the talent for those wondering exactly how you can pick this thing up, as we said, it is from the new Broken Rain Incursion. Each time you run through that, you should have around a 1% chance to get this to drop from any of the bosses in Broken Rain, and then once per week per character, you have a 10% chance to get this from the final chest at the end of the incursion. Obviously, this is only once per week because you can only get one key to open that up per week, but if you want to run it on all 4 characters or even make new characters repeatedly to continue running it, you can do that, and you may end up wanting to because it is also worth noting that at this time we have no reconfiguration blueprint for this. You'll see the mine came with optimal range. If you want a different third stat there, then you're going to need to continue running Broken Rain and hoping that you get a different one. But alright, let's break this down further. As you can see, the base RPM on this is 420. It has a 40 round mag. This is based off the ACR rifle variant archetype, so the stats should pretty closely mirror that. But let's scroll on down to the talent here. It is called Shakedown. It reads, body shots add 1 stack to the enemy for 10 seconds. Max stack is 3. Hitting a different enemy will remove all stacks. This weapon deals 4% amplified damage per stack. Your next headshot on an enemy with stacks consumes all stacks, dealing 11% amplified damage per stack. So, some quick math, at full stacks you will be dealing 12% additional amp damage. If you then headshot that enemy, it will consume all 3 and deal 33% amp damage. Not terrible numbers on their own, but we'll take a look at why I think this is ultimately just not good enough. Finally, it says destroying an enemy's weak point causes them to take 10% amp damage from you for 5 seconds. So a very quick demonstration here. In the range, if I shoot this target with a body shot, you'll see it adds that symbol down on my HUD. The stacks last for a limited amount of time, which is why it's running out. If I shoot again, the bar goes up to 2, but then the stack will still deplete over time. But if we go all the way, 1, 2, 3, and then we move up to hit a headshot, it will deal higher damage, and then they all deplete. One interesting thing here is that this does seem to be coded similarly to the first bloom, for example, where when you hit that headshot and get the extra amp damage, it does calculate it separately. So when I hit that, you'll see I get 2 separate damage numbers. Just a little note if you're wondering how this is going to interact with certain sets or other talents. So what's the deal here? I mean, we're getting amp damage. Surely this thing should be pretty good, right? Well, it's tough. You may have noticed that the top half of the talent is really just a souped up version of Breadbasket. That is a standard weapon talent that is available on high-end rifles. You hit body shots to amp up your next headshot. The only problem with that, especially on an archetype like the ACR, is that you're not going to be playing it slow where you can really track that, right? I'm not going 1, 2, 3, then move up to hit a headshot. No, I'm just going to hold down the trigger and try and hit as many shots as I can in quick succession, which I will say works decently. If you're going to run this, I'd recommend that you either aim for the upper chest and neck or just go for headshots. Our conditions are a little too static here, but in combat, enemies will move around enough that you should eventually land some body shots and just proc that naturally while you aim for the head. But that then means that you're sort of ignoring half of its talent anyway and just banking on getting some bonus damage. I also don't love the bottom part, the weak point destroying to get extra amp damage. It would be fantastic if it lasted for longer and if that amp damage just applied to any other enemy that you want to go and shoot. But the bonus damage only applies to the enemy's weak point of which you destroyed, and it's only for 5 seconds. So that bonus is very minimal, and I don't think you're going to benefit from it all that often. I'll tell you what my other big gripe with this weapon is, and I don't know if people on PC maybe you're going to feel the same way. I don't think this thing handles all that well. Now, it's sort of weird because when you're standing out of cover, it almost seems like it does better. I'm not going to hold the stick down or anything. This is just its raw recoil and accuracy. But you'll see when I shoot, the accuracy is not that bad, but it does pull up quite hard. But look, the dot there staying pretty centered. When I go into cover though, if I do the exact same thing right here, it's kicking around way more. That center dot, it's jumping. The stability is overall the same, but isn't that kind of odd? I don't know if that's something just with the ACR in particular or with rifles, but you'd imagine that if in and out of cover gameplay weren't going to be the same, which they ideally should be, that in cover would be more stable than out of cover. But yeah, that was just sort of a weird discrepancy I noticed. So I have my gripes, sure, but does this gun work? Yeah. It works. This is the build that I've been running it with the most in kind of open world heroic level content. I will say I tried this with a lot of different sets and combinations, but I do think that aces and eights, especially with the chest piece, does put out a good amount of damage if you have the appropriate rifle to pair. Of course, foxes are great for the brand bonus and the detox. I only am using a second piece of Overlord to get that 30% accuracy because I do think that its base handling is just not good enough for the way that I want to play with it. But this works just fine. I also took this into tier 10 escalation with a concentrated company build, and it put in solid work. I don't want to make it seem like this weapon is bad. It's not bad, but I just don't know if it lives up to the mark of what I personally believe an exotic should embody if it's going to be awarded from, again, a raid or an incursion or some kind of prestige content. The Eagle Bear, the Ravenous, the Ouroboros, even the Prima Donna that just got added to Paradise Lost a couple weeks back, even if those weapons are not the absolute cream of the crop or the top of the meta these days, they've all had their time in the sun, or at the very least their talent is unique and enables them to do very specific niche things that are powerful and fun and cool. The Steel and Sons just doesn't quite have that. I feel that in its current form, it's just fine at really wherever you want to take it. But is there a way to fix that? I think so, and I really do hope that the team will take a second look at this weapon, especially in an age where we're heading into Year 8 Season 3, where they're doing this big PvE rebalance of a bunch of the red focused gear sets, they're retuning brand sets. And I do want to note when you're looking at this build that I've been running it with, in the next couple of weeks, this is actually going to get much more powerful. If you have not checked out the patch notes for the latest PTS, Aces and Eights is proposed to get some major buffs. It's going to get 15% additional rifle damage off of the 2-piece. It's going to get 30% weapon handling on the 3 to match breaking point. That alone would fix a lot of my complaints with its inherent handling. And the 4-piece, if you're using the chest piece specifically, is now going to give 100% amplified damage per each charge shot. So you take those changes, you combine it on top of the fact that I could still raise the expertise level on this, I still could get a much better third attribute. There's room to improve this, and I don't want to ignore that. But especially when we're talking about the aces changes, it just feels like this is going to be taking advantage of a strong gear set rather than us having a really distinct, cool, powerful exotic that pairs well with another good set in the game. So, what are my ideas? Well, I have 2 of them. If we head back into the range right here, we already took a look at the base handling of this thing, but if I'm not controlling the recoil at all, it kicks quite high. The accuracy is fine out of cover, but for whatever reason, when you go into cover, it seems to get worse. Now, that would be fine for a high-end rifle, but this is an exotic, and an incursion exotic at that. Easy fix for that, in my opinion, is go in and buff the mod that gives you 10% weapon handling. Take that to 40 or 50. That might seem like a lot, but again, especially because rifles already struggle so much in the meta, why not make this thing a laser beam that's just much more potent? In light of that, taking a look at the talent here, I think the most unique part of its talent is the weak point element, but again, I have gripes with how it's actually implemented and works. My idea, why not make this thing just kind of a better version of opportunistic? Make it so that when you destroy a weak point, you get, let's say, 20, maybe even 25% amp damage for 15 or 20 seconds, and then anyone else on your team gets an extra 5 or 10 amp damage against that specific enemy whose weak point was destroyed. That way you can count on getting much more consistent damage for yourself, but it will still go and debuff particular enemies for your teammates to exploit, which would be most useful in high tier escalation runs or content like that. If you did that and made this thing a little bit easier to control, I think you could go and remove those first 3 paragraphs of the talent entirely, and I imagine that would make the Steel and Sons much more appealing, attractive, and powerful for people to use. Because as it stands right now, while I love the design of this thing and while I do think it is fun to shoot and play with, I could get so much more benefits by running a regular rifle, which already puts me at a disadvantage against Striker and ARs, but really I could use a regular ACR, the Tinkerer, Killer, and Boomerang, and I think I'd have a much better time and much more consistent damage than anything that I could get with the Steel and Sons. Well, there you have it, everybody. That is my review, breakdown, whatever you want to call it, for the new Steel and Sons exotic ACR. I hope I didn't ramble on too long there, but again, I feel really impassioned about this. I want to use this weapon so badly. I've really been itching to run a rifle build lately, so I was hyped when I learned that we were going to get this with Broken Rain. And again, it looks so cool. I want to run it. I just wish it had a little bit more of a universal appeal and a stronger output. But at this point, I would love to get any and all thoughts that you guys may have about this new item. If you've already picked one up for yourself, what are your thoughts on it? Are there any good build combinations that you found for it? Do you think it's fine as is? Or maybe do you agree with me in that it could use some tuning? Let me know. As always, I'll be very curious to read through. And please, if anyone on the team is watching, consider giving the Steel and Sons a second look. I would be so happy to have a fairly meta rifle to run over just the standard ARs and LMGs. But anywho, thank you all so much for coming by and watching. And until I see you next, RogueGold. Ow. Oh! We just got a Ravenous! I might not be friendly. Let's go.
Coming to the Division 2.
Let's go!
And